I'm Lights, and this is the story behind Skin and Earth. I think the idea of Skin and Earth probably started when I was young. This whole project is like very transmedia. There's comic element, there's tons of visuals, and everything really ties into the music. And I think that's been a dream of mine forever. So I would say it probably started when I first started reading comics, but the core idea of Skin and Earth started when I was touring on Little Machines still. And it was a dream of mine to do a comic. So I just kind of started researching how to do a comic because I had no idea how. I actually learned how to do it all on YouTube. So you can learn anything on YouTube. And I just kind of started writing a story, a very minimal idea of a story that I could take into songwriting sessions. And it was a few sentences I would tell my co-writer or the producer that was working in the session. And it was kind of fun because it established what we would write about and what the feel of the song would be, because we were trying to capture a feeling. And it was kind of this new doorway that opened into this creative process I'd never experienced before. So the songs started to come together, and I didn't tell anyone else that I was working on this secret storyline that was tying everything together. Meantime, I'm working on my drawing, which sucked. It's very bad. I went through a few iterations of the art before it got anywhere near good, but just let that be an inspiration to you. You can suck at something and still pull it off on YouTube. At that point, after I'd written a few songs that people were excited about on the team and at the label, I kind of slid across the table the idea that it was actually going to be a conceptual record with a comic component. Not sure what anyone would say about it. And people were stoked. They're like, cool, like, go for it. And then I was like, this is real. I have to do this now. So I just dove in, and like I kind of tricked myself into committing to this massive project that I was completely unaware of how to pull off. And then after that, I fleshed out the story as a whole and divided it into 12 parts. And each of those parts of the story was going to be a song. And that helped direct what the song would be called, what it would be about. And then if I would write a song that I thought would really suit a part of the story, I would tweak the story so it would match that. And it was just like really symbiotic creative process. And when I was done writing all the songs, that's when I just started drawing the comic, because once you start drawing, you cannot go back. It takes so long. Every page, 10 hours, 8 to 10 hours for a page. And there's 170 pages in this project. It was originally kind of supposed to be 20 pages and really escalated from there. But then I decided I was gonna do like the real comic thing, because comics on average 22, 23 pages each. And this turned into a 6-issue series with about 2 songs per issue. So it was a big undertaking, and kind of my free ticket into Comic-Cons. Anyone I wanted to go to. I'd say the biggest roadblock was just the pure work that went into it. Self-doubt and just the sheer labor, I think, of the whole project were the biggest hangups. And it actually made it become that the music was the easiest part. And that was what I needed, because writing the record before, Little Machines, was actually one of the hardest records I've had to write. It was like coming out of a place of writer's block and like very low inspiration and squeezing water out of a rock, and it was really hard. And I needed to get to a place where like music was the easy part, you know? So I think maybe that was sort of like a subconscious thing about this project. But yeah, I was just learning how to delegate time in a life that there's touring, and I have a kid, and you have relationships and friendships, and you have a life, but you also have writing music, and there's a lot of things that I had to like balance out. And I learned time delegation, which is very crucial for people to learn, and you have to force yourself into situations where you have to learn it. And then, yes, I would look at other comics and be like, I'm never going to be that good. But you can't look at that. You can't compare yourself to other people. You can learn from it. You can learn from the flow of books. You can learn from the flow of music. But as long as you know you did your best, I think you can always be proud of the work. And I walked away from it knowing I spent every ounce of energy I had on making that comic. There was a part of the story where I wanted the main character named N to sort of rediscover her power. It was through a relationship that occurs in the book. This character named Sue comes into the picture and kind of starts to pull the best out of her. And it's off the tales of this life of sort of oppression and control. So at the end of the day, I actually ended up writing a couple songs, and Giants was the one that made the most sense for this, that like really conveyed the idea the best. And at the end of the day, like Giants is a song about fighting feeling controlled and fighting feeling small, like you are powerless. And there's a sort of an anthemic actual tempo change that happens in the chorus that is the moment that you feel hope for the first time. And that was a challenge on its own, because essentially it's two different tempos and it switches back and forth between these two tempos, and that is hard to do. And it was hard to play live when we first started doing it, but it was just kind of like, it felt like a time to experiment and like try new things and experience the feeling I was trying to convey in as real of a way as possible. The collaborations were all really, they just felt organic and like nothing was forced. I do a lot of co-writes. I spent my entire career like in sessions with strangers. You know, my first two records were actually probably more so with the same few people. But you're going in, it was hard for me to go into a session and just be like, well, put my heart on the table. I don't know you, but I'm gonna write with you, I guess. Like music is like a very personal thing, and still is for me. I think that down the road when you get older and more jaded, you can probably disconnect yourself from it a little bit more and just write. But I'm always writing from the heart, and it helps when you know the person. So obviously I didn't really know the people going into this, but having that storyline kind of helped shelter me from feeling like it was me. I was able to write through another person. So that was really helpful going in with these strangers, but ended up making tons of friends along the way because it was such a cool experience. So like I got hooked up with Dylan Bauld. He's in the band Flor, and this was before Flor was a thing, and he was showing me his stuff, and he's just like such a creative dude and so positive, and it was like very mutual respect in the session. I think that's the most important thing about a writing session. Like he sees me as a writer and a producer, and I see him as a writer and producer. It was just like easy. We did 3 songs on the record, and then our mutual friend is Josh Dunn. So Josh Dunn played on 2 of those songs, Savage and Almost Had Me. It was just like everything just kind of happened because it felt so good. Another one that was awesome was Corin Roddick from Purity Ring. I'm a big fan of Purity Ring, and got the connect. I can't remember how we got the connect. I think it was through one of my managers, Chris Taylor, who worked with them previously, and just sat in a session with him and wrote Until the Light. He had this track and we just wrote on it. It was fun. He's like one of the chillest, nicest dudes, and just felt like family, meeting people along the way. Another really cool collab on that was with Alan Wilkes from Big Data. He's like the main brains behind Big Data, and awesome producer, and has the cutest dog. And we just sat down and wrote this. We wrote a couple songs, but Moonshine was the one that made the cut on the record. And we still we talk all the time. Like it's just nice to be able to like come out of sessions feeling like really positive about the people you work with. Stephen Kosmaniak, we did a few songs, awesome producer as well. So it's, yeah, you never know what's going to turn into something great, but the ones that do last forever. Oh man, making the videos was probably the funnest part. That's like the payoff after all the hard work is done. It was like, we decided to do a video for every issue of the comic. We still haven't done the last issue. I don't know if that's ever gonna happen. I don't know if I'll be able to follow through on my promise with that, but we did 5 out of 6 of the issues. And because I mean, making music videos in 2019, you get like $5. You know what I mean? Like you're working with what you get. That was, it cost more than $5, but pulling 5 videos out of a record, I'm so proud of. And we started with Giants, and we wanted to like show the storyline and really highlight the comic and bring the world to life without giving it away, because that's the 5th issue. And so it was like bringing this initial an initial idea of what this whole project was without giving too much of the story away, because that was a very pivotal part of the story. And I remember just sitting there with the girl we cast to play the Mitsuki character, and I was like, explaining to her how this character walks and talks and feels, and it was just like I felt like a director, and I was like my story's coming to life, and everything was like I was almost in tears shooting some of those scenes. And then we followed through with all the other videos. We did one for the previous 4 issues, and each one of them just captured the world in such a wicked way. And Jeremy Shallenrud did all the directing, and he really brought like a cinematic perspective to it. So it was just really cool. It was like unbelievable, actually, to be able to see a world that's just in your head. I just make shit up. And it's like suddenly in front of you, and you're immersed in it. Anything's possible, my friends. Yeah, I mean, I've made acoustic versions of my records for years. I've done one for every album so far, and each one I've tried to tweak the idea of it a little bit, so it's something that's a little bit unexpected. And with this one, obviously, I wanted to make sure it tied in with the whole story, and because the album is so tied with the comic and the visuals, that I was like, how do I bring that into the comic element? And I decided that the best way to capture the comic in a new sensory experience would be recording in like the environments associated with the chapters that those songs occur in. So, for example, Savage, the chapter of Savage takes place in the rain. And so I had to record in the rain under an umbrella. And that was so challenging. Like, it sounds easy, but I had all my gear, my laptop, my interface, my nice mic, my guitar, all under this umbrella in the rain so I can track the rain. And I pulled 7 songs from the album and did up like immersive experiential recordings with those. And it was a new thing for me too, a new challenge for me, because I was producing it all, I was engineering it all, performing it all, mixing it all. The only thing I didn't do was master it, which this really cool badass chick Aya did out of New York, just trying to highlight women behind the scenes in music, because even when people work with women behind the scenes in music, they don't usually call them out. So Aya Merrill killed it on the mastering. So it just came down to like finding the right locations, getting there, filming it. Bo, my husband, came along, and it was like an adventure for us everywhere we went, just tracking and trying to get the right spot and the right visual and then the right sound. Some of these places were like, I can't give too much away about what they are, because I'm going to start to drop. I guess it does give it away in the track listing. We already told. So like one of them was like a tunnel. Trying to find a tunnel that's not busy, that sounds good, that looks epic is really hard to do. So I had to track that down. So I'll be releasing visuals for each one of the songs that came out, that'll be coming out on the acoustic record, so people can get a look at how it was all done, because it was like quite a challenge. And then it came down to just like how that feels, how the environment feels, how can you capture it? So the tunnel one is like, let's do like big ambient vocal pads that use the natural reverb in this tunnel. You know, one that's in the bedroom, let's make that intimate and like very dry, and like there's very few effects. Like this is just you and me, you know? So what really ended up impacting the production ideas for the songs were the environments. Oh man, I think this world has become such a like creature at this point, like a living being, that it's like just the beginning. We're actually working on a TV show, and who knows how long that kind of thing takes. But the prospect of it turning into something even bigger is amazing, and inviting more people into that world is so special. And yes, I'm working on the second arc of it, and bringing in new characters and pushing my skills, I guess, I'm really bad at drawing dudes. So all the dudes I draw kind of look like girls. So learning how to draw people, it's just, and infusing like cool architecture. It's just like, I'm having a lot of fun working on the second arc, knowing what I know now about having learned it all in the first arc. And yeah, it's gonna keep going. It's gonna live on, and it's to be decided. I can't tell too much, but it's gonna be in a different way than it was in the first album, but it will carry on.